This episode of Between Turns is brought to you by Team Digression, whose focus and dedication can... Oh, here we go. Yeah, tip off. Man, I'm so good at video games. Yeah.
So, John.
It's early. Whew, bright in here.
Yeah, it is. It is almost. It's almost 2 o'clock. Jesus Christ.
It's neither of those.
Oh wait, no, you're like 5 or 6, right? You're in North Carolina or something, right?
Yeah, I'm Eastern time.
How's that catching up with you?
It's getting on dinner time. I'm gonna go have some delicious cookout here in a minute.
Oh, that's good. What kind of cookout? Like burgers?
No, it's actually a restaurant called Cookout.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, and they I mean it tastes like you're at like someone's house and they did it on a grill. It's pretty awesome. Out of your backyard deliciousness.
Except for the soggy French fries that were kind of baked and didn't really cook all the way through.
No, I typically get hush puppies because it's North Carolina.
Who makes hush puppies at home?
Me.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. Dude, we fry food all the time, man.
Wow.
Seriously.
You live in the life, man.
Man, we do arancini, and we do falafel.
Falafels.
We do hush puppies. I fry grits.
Oh, do you make bluth balls?
What are those the corn baller?
Oh my god, dude. They're so good. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not kidding. This isn't a joke. Like, hilarious reference aside, if you actually eat a bluth ball, they're amazing.
What is it? Is it just is it like
it's creamed corn inside of kind of like, you know, like fried sauerkraut balls? Have you ever had those?
Yeah.
It's just like that, but instead of sauerkraut on the inside, it's creamed corn, and it is unbelievably good.
Well, so one of my favorite things, and we're not even going to talk about board games today, but one of my favorite things is
well, then you better get editing because we need at least one.
You know, we are both Southerners, therefore there's a lot of gravy at our house that gets made. Like, I mean, it's like for us, coffee wasn't like a morning routine until, you know, we both started doing things that required us to actually wake up in the morning. I mean, for us, it was like we have a lazy morning. Let's make a pot of coffee and have brunch, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when it got to the point that we were making coffee in the morning and it had to be part of the morning routine, it was funny to us that we would have to stop what we were doing and focus our energies on making coffee. Like it wasn't seamless. It wasn't this thing that we had an SOP working for. Like we were having to dedicate mental activity to it. However, we could make gravy while we were doing other things and having conversations. Well, the best part about just making copious amounts of full-fat gravy is that you can save your gravy, put it in the fridge, and let it congeal. And you do this until you get a large amount of congealed gravy in your refrigerator, which at our house takes maybe 4 days. And then, on a night that you really want something special, you take that congealed gravy and you batter it and you fry it.
That sounds awesome.
It is amazing. And it's not that crazy because it is actually the constituent components of a Cuban croqueta. So I'm not just making this up. Like, this is actually a thing, but we just sort of found a little life hack to use something we already had.
That is tremendous.
Pretty awesome, right?
It is.
Dude, John Middleton, changing lives.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I'll send you a care package. It'll be the most disgusting looking care package in the world.
Here's a basket of mud, hand packed.
Anyway, yeah. So yeah, man, frying foods. We do it all the time. Fried chicken. We do fish and chips.
Yeah, our kids won't eat any of that stuff, so.
Yeah.
So we don't do it.
I'll have you over for the next Friday. No, honestly, like we actually have Friday, frying on Fridays.
Theme is important. That would be awesome. Like I haven't had fried. I mean, like I need fried food, right? But but yeah, that's not something we really do. We don't even like. Plus, we lack counter space for that kind of thing too.
Well, see, and this actually may be a segue back into board gaming because the tool that I use for frying is actually our wok.
Uh-huh.
because it is, one, amazing, but two, we run our kitchen like a workshop. You know, we don't have stuff in our kitchen that has single uses, unless it is something that is imperative and can only do that one process, and it's something we do all the time. In general, we kind of focus on tools that function in different ways, and because of the heating properties of the wok, it's kind of a unique thing, and it does its own stuff, but it also doubles as an excellent fry mechanism. Huh. So yeah, we don't just bring stuff into the house and then decide, we don't want to use it, just leave it on the shelf. Yeah,
You're
I mean, if exactly. Well, and we're ruthless, man. Like if we don't use a tool, be it in the kitchen or even for that matter, me out in the workshop. Like if I don't use a tool in a calendar year, it's gone.
Really?
Like, we don't. Yeah, we don't put up with that crap because we have a small house.
So you do that with your board games too? If you haven't played it in a year, you just throw it in the trash?
Well, we use it to light our fires in the winter. It's really the only. Yeah, it's the only way. No.
I actually prefer to use good games for fire. Specifically, I don't know, ones that I've ever lost to specific people. Like if it's a bad memory, I feel the need to throw it in the fire. If it's in the top 10 of Board Game Geek and I feel that it doesn't deserve to be there, I like to throw it into the fire because the pain and the screams that I feel pouring out of the vine right out of the internet, just a million voices screaming at once as Scythe slowly burns away to nothing.
So it's
worth $150.
Is this how you remember like Winters of Note? Like, oh man, that's the Blizzard of 56. But to you, it's like, oh, that's the Blizzard of Stegmaier.
Right. Absolutely.
Nothing but Stegmaier games got us through that winter.
Yeah. Yeah. All those Ryan Dockett games.
Oh man. All right. Two potential sponsors down. Who
else
can...
Right.
No. But no. To answer your question with a modicum of seriousness, was that the right word? Modicum, maybe. And a
modicum,
small amount of seriousness.
Sounds like a wizard. Modicum.
Oh, that's my new Frostgrave wizard.
No, that's my old Frostgrave wizard. I already claimed it. Darth Modicum.
No, because mine's a time mage, so it's Modicum the time mage. Anyway.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, but to answer the question seriously, no. It is actually a bit of a weak point because I'm that ruthless when it comes to books, for example. If I read a book and I don't like it, it's gone. I mean, honestly, even like music, like if I get an album and the only song on it that's good is the one that I first heard, that album's gone. Like I'm not going to keep a whole CD around for one song, like especially nowadays. You know, it's not going to happen. But board games are kind of a weakness because, well, I don't know. I was about to launch into a whole big long justification, which I then was going to immediately undermine by saying it's something I need to correct. So it doesn't really matter why I do it. It's wrong. Because I do it everywhere else in my life. There's really no reason for me to hang on to as many games as I do.
Yeah, I mean, I really kind of approach my board games like books. That's sort of what drives me to collect certain designers. Because it feels like learning a new game is like reading a new book from my favorite author. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I have collected big swaths of games from certain people. And I don't necessarily like them all. So I've danced around with, maybe getting rid of the ones I don't like because I have read the book. I have experienced it. But like you said, with books, I read 20 books and 18 of them I never read again. And the ones that I really, really love, then I'll read 6 times. So logically, the only ones I should keep are the ones I read 6 times. And I wonder if that's where I need to steer for board games. Because like anyone who does this, if you've been doing it a while, you end up with a giant collection of board games, and a giant collection of board games is not small. And I am kissing up against peak capacity right now. I think I'm sitting at like 400
You're actually sitting
games.
On a game. Like you have a throne built out of games because you have so many.
Right. The throne of game of Thrones. But I'm sitting roughly at 400 games, a little bit over, I think. That doesn't feel ludicrous and overwhelming. However, the way a lot of people curate is they have a number. When this bookshelf is full, I don't get another game unless one leaves. and or 150 games is where I want my collection. Whenever I get a new game, one has to leave if it's over that 150 number. For me, it's not practical, but that number to me is 365. And I'm sure it's not hard for you to discern why, because it's just, I'm looking at this going, I have literally a game for every day of the week, and I don't play games every day. So at that point, it starts to feel a little silly. And it doesn't feel silly when you're building that collection, because when you're building that collection, you have this delusion of a library of games for all time, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I've been that way about music specifically. You know, I want to get the nice version of this deluxe album because it's an album I love and I'll listen to it for the rest of my life. And that's cool for the first like 20 of those. And then you get to the point where, you know, you grow out of that music, you don't listen to it at all anymore. Maybe you might have like a weird emotional attachment because of a time in your life, but you really don't enjoy listening to it. And, you know, I think when you start collecting board games for 15, 20 years, you start to hit that same spot. You know, this is my favorite thing and I want to play it forever and ever, but the practicality of it is you don't end up playing that stuff forever and ever. You know, the old mainstay, one of the first board games I ever owned was Power Grid. The whole group loves Power Grid. We still revisit it once a year, but I don't know that we played it last year. Like it has started even being one of the stalwarts. Has started becoming a game that we almost are playing it ironically when we play it. You know, it's just no one wants to set aside Millennium Blades to play Power Grid, or no one wants to set aside Star Trek Ascendancy to play Power Grid. It's just, you know, it's 15 years old, and it's an old, comfy pair of sweatpants, but you know, we're out doing a thing. We don't want to be wearing comfy sweatpants. So,
yeah. I mean, do you think it'll hit a point where you won't be able to justify keeping it in your collection, or do you think that something that is that well worn and comfy and is your favorite deserves a spot, even if it's not seeing play?
Power Grid specifically for me, it will stay in my collection until I play through every map, because
that's impossible.
No, it's not. You're so naive, John. It's very simple.
Apparently, I am.
We could do it in a weekend if you wanted to play 26 auction games in a row.
Oh, well, clearly.
But I feel like that's probably a bad idea. But you know, I mean, that's a personal kind of thing for me, because the way I enjoy the hobby is kind of the archaeologist, historian kind of. I play broad more than deep. I don't try to become chess master at any one game. I want to try all the games so that I have this huge pool of reference, because that's what I enjoy. You know, I'm just a trivia guy, right? At heart, it's what it boils down to. Like I just like knowing, hey, you know, and I used to be that way with CDs too. Like I used to like knowing that, hey, that band has that drummer from that other band that made this song that was written by this guy in this other band. Like that kind of stuff is really fun to me. And I think that's kind of followed me into board gaming a little bit, because I like to see everything that a designer has ever done, and I like to find a game that has a really cool mechanic and then find out that that mechanic came from a different game, and go check out that old game to see, hey, this is where this thing came from. You know, we've joked about that. Like I have these games, I sit down that I feel like, okay, everyone is going to hate this, but we got to try it once because I said so. You know, and that's where that comes from. I mean, that's what I'm doing when that happens. Is I want to see, you know, and sometimes it works out. Like we'll play a game like Kalis, which is it's not the origin of worker placement, because that's actually a Richard Breeze game that costs like $5,000. So I'll never play that. But you know, the thing that made worker placement a huge deal was Kalis. You know, I didn't play Kalis from 2004 or whatever on when it came out. Like I didn't get into Kalis until like 2014 or something. So I was way late to the party on playing Kalis, but I wanted to see, like, this is the kind of the you know, one of the, they didn't invent it. They're like Led Zeppelin, right? Like Richard Breeze made this awesome blues song in 1906, but no one cared or knew about it until Led Zeppelin just stole it and released it. Yeah. And Kalis kind of did the same thing. Like no one heard about this game that had 1,000 copies, but Kalis, the guy who designed Kalis, played it and said, this is a cool mechanism, and it became huge back when it came out. It was a top 5 game for a long time. So when we wanted to get into that, and I wanted to just check out Kalos, wanted to see what it was all about. So a buddy of mine bought it, and we sat down and played it, and we got done and went, "Yep, that was a top 5 game for a reason. That game is amazing." So it does work out here and again. That you play something super old and you get a little nugget. And again, Kalos wasn't a shot in the dark. He was a top 5 game forever. We knew it was a good game. But sometimes that happens with games that aren't in the top 5,000 that you just play because you followed this little trail of crumbs, and it ends up being really worthwhile.
Bringing your wisdom to the masses. Oh, man.
And really what this podcast is all about is my gaming wizard wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
No. Your comment about treating your board game collection almost like books is one that I find kind of funny, but in two opposite directions, right? Because both my wife and I collect books. Like, we have lots of books, and we like going and finding them and finding old books. And I've been collecting books probably now for about 15 years. Interesting books that I like. I really like old vintage, like Golden Age sci-fi and that kind of stuff. And we have a massive, massive book collection of books that I have not read. When I see a bookshelf full of sci-fi from before the Cold War really kind of got going, I just get excited. Whereas when I look at a wall full of unplayed board games, specifically ones that are older, that I bought because people told me they were great, and I still haven't played them yet, I just feel dread. And it's kind of funny. Like, there's a fellow by the name of Walter Benjamin who wrote a couple of really cool essays on design and some things like that. But one of his essays that people really don't care about is about collecting books. And he talks about it really, the whole essay is about what makes a collection important. Like, what is it about the process of collecting that's so interesting? And he talks a lot about how, specifically for someone that's really into collecting, hard to find books and first editions and stuff like that, you can spend 6 years tracking down one book. And so there's an entire story to that.
Yeah.
Even if you never read the book, or even if you read it and hate it and you think it's the dumbest story in the world and it says nothing important whatsoever, the story of how you found it and what you went through to get it is why it's on the shelf, because it reminds you of all of the other things that you did. Or another example he gives is like, when you're just in a store and you find a book that's amazing that you've been looking for years and years and years, every time you see its spine looking back at you on the shelf, it reminds you of the trip you were on when you found it, or the conversations you had that day when you tried to explain to the people you were with why you're jumping up and down in public. Those things become important. Board games, at least for me, they don't necessarily do that, because when I buy a board game, I either go down to the store and just swipe my card, or I go online and swipe my card. It's.
Oh man, you and I need to do some. We need to do some field trips, buddy. I feel bad for you, because this is a huge part of it.
Like I haven't had the Grail game experience.
Yeah,
I genuinely haven't had that, and so as a result, all these games that are looking back on my shelf that are unplayed, there's nothing attached to them other than just this, John, you should play them, and you're not playing them because you'd really rather be playing Rocket League. Then I just feel guilty and angsty, and I do what everyone does in that situation, which is I go eat some ice cream and then ignore it until I feel better.
It's just so funny because you're going through that whole list of reasons people collect books, and I'm sitting here nodding. I'm like, yep.
This is exactly why I have these games.
This is not only similar to board game collecting, this is exactly board game collecting.
Yeah.
And then you wrap it up with like, it doesn't apply at all.
See,
but to me, I don't know, it doesn't. That's for you.
But this is a curiosity.
I get it.
And in my circuitous way, I'm leading off with like, here's this principle that I apply to book collecting, and I will go to bat, for other people that apply it to their book collecting, and yet I don't apply it to games. But I can see the inconsistency, especially when, for example, I'm carrying around what is essentially a footlocker. I mean, it literally is a footlocker that I have all my BattleTech stuff in, knowing full well that like no one's going to play that game with me. Because either they don't know what it is, and I'm going to pull out this footlocker, and they're going to go no, or they know what it is, and I'm just going to tell them about the Foot Locker, and they're going to go, no.
Or thirdly, they're going to go, I know what BattleTech is, and it's a terrible game, and why on earth are you carrying that thing around? Do something better with your energy, John.
So I have these exceptions because the experience surrounding a game is so great. I mean, I have games that I've purchased because I played them with other people, and they were so fun that when I moved away from them, I said, I need to get that game in my collection. And then I haven't played it since. So, or there do exist exceptions in that there is an experience attached to them. But I think what that points out is that the biggest problem with a lot of these games on my shelf that are unplayed is that there's frankly no reason for them to be there other than it was an impulse buy. And, I had some expendable cash, and maybe I fell for the marketing or something, or the flashy cover image. I guess that is kind of something to be ashamed of, maybe, because I spent money on this thing that I'm not using. But to circle around to the point you were making about Power Grid, which is where I wanted to go, and that is that I'm a little bit different in that if I've played a game, one of two things happens, because I typically try to play deep on my games anyway. One, because it takes me a little bit longer to kind of really figure out what's going on and how to interact with it in the way I want to.
Right.
Once you get to that level of play, specifically if you play with one person, and that's typically how I end up getting deep into a game, is I find one person interested in it and we just play that one game over and over and over. And when you develop that, you now create a situation where you're playing the game, but you're also playing the other person. So then if a situation occurs where for whatever reason you lose that opponent, you move away, life happens, you all get new jobs, whatever. Losing the opponent is the reason to then just get rid of the game, because it wouldn't be as much fun to play a game with a new opponent who doesn't have all that history and may not, we may just kind of be missing each other like ships in the night when we play it. And it's only ever going to be a shadow of the good times with my one friend.
Yeah, it's like you blew the processor in your game and now it doesn't really function.
Yeah. And so keeping it on the shelf, there's great memories attached to it and everything. However, it's also unnecessary, because even if someone says, hey, I want to play that game, I'm going to look at them and go, that's awesome. And I hope you find someone that wants to play it with you, because I'm not that person, because all of my good plays are behind me. You know what I mean? I'm like a gunslinger who's in town who's like, well,
yeah,
I wish you good luck.
That's not my kind of modus operandi on that, but at the same time, I do have games that I've reached that point that I go, my best times of this game are behind me, and I don't want to train up a new player, and I get rid of it. And I have actually taken that approach to games and gotten rid of them before too. So I get what you're saying on that one for sure. There's a million reasons to keep games on your shelves, right? And I don't think,
of course, yeah,
stuff like the Jones system and whatnot that people have, those are kind of a useful, I don't know, like a gauge, I guess. But I don't think they're a good filter, so to speak. It's a thing to be aware of. Like maybe the first step on your 10-point list of why you're going to get rid of a game is this too similar? Like I just recently, a couple days ago, I played Automobile from AEG, the cube builder. Have you seen that one? And that was kind of a weird spot for me, because it was fun. Like it was a good time, and I was kind of looking at the cards and going through the permutations of different layouts of stuff that can happen, and it was a really neat game that I had a ton of fun with. So I kind of mentally was cataloging it of something to throw onto the wish list. But at the same time, as I'm checking off that box in my head, I kind of sat there and was like, but is it better than Thunder Alley? Not even close. Like, it's not even close to better than Thunder Alley. And with that blunt assessment of it, the follow-up to that is immediately, how many times do we all get together to play a racing game? And we all really liked Thunder Alley. I mean, I think everyone had a blast with it and would be overwhelmingly happy to play it again at any time. So with all of those traits in that Thunder Alley box, where's the time I'm going to pull down Automobiles off the shelf to play it? And I really don't have a good answer to that, other than I really liked this and it was fun, and I covet it now because it was fun. Just as a quick, covet's a little strong, but the point being is, it's usually it's pretty easy for me to sit down, play a game, and either go, that was terrible, or that was fun and I can play it again or never play it again, I don't care, or that was fun and I should have it because it really appealed to some aspect of me. And I think that automobile game was honestly the first time I played a game that everything about it appealed to me, and yet I couldn't plug it into my shelves and be happy it was there because of something pre-existing. That just doesn't happen very often.
It's funny to me that the thing that, well, I mean, I don't know much about the mechanics, and you don't have to get into it, but I was thinking that you were going to say, yeah, I played automobiles, and it's hard for me to get it because I have so many other deck builders. But instead, what you're saying is it's hard to get into it because you already have a better racing game.
Right.
It's really interesting because we played. Oh man, I'm blanking on what it was now. We played Orleans, which was a phenomenal game. Phenomenal game. That game made me go, oh, man, but I love Hyperborea, and frankly, I actually really want to go play Hyperborea right now. That's a mechanical thing,
yeah.
But.
And that was also the second half of my analysis of automobiles. Because as you said, you thought I was going to go to the deck building part.
Yeah.
And I kind of did in my analysis. What if I want to play a bag builder? Well, Orleans was great. And Hyperborea is not only one of my favorite games, but a favorite game of our entire group. Even that aspect, looking at that kind of theme or mechanics of what it does, I still ended up in the same place. There was something pre-existing on my shelves that we all loved, and I'm circling all the way back around to having 400 games, a different game for every day of the week for an entire year. It just seemed like it was going to be more clutter when not only my happiness but the table's happiness would be higher playing one of those other games.
But even talking about theme, I mean, you're pointing out a different reason other than just the typical board gamer talk about, oh, I have so many games that are this mechanic, therefore I can't justify it. Like, just bringing up the issue of theme opens up this whole other door to where are you in your headspace when you play a game? And not even just theme, like, okay, fantasy is where I want to be, and this is my favorite fantasy setting, therefore this is my one game, which you could totally do. But it's even to the extent of, and this is something I've done, and that is say, if I want a campaign experience, this is the game I want to play. I mean, right now, for me, that's probably still Galaxy Defenders. And at some point, though, I will have played the campaign enough times that I'm going to want a new campaign experience. And what keeps Galaxy Defenders in my collection, and specifically when I put it on the table, it is to interact with the campaign, not the game necessarily. So that when I find a new campaign experience, it doesn't matter what the mechanics are, for that matter, even the setting. The reason that I have Galaxy Defenders on my shelf that mantle will have passed to something else. Because campaign play is like, basically that is, we have a long weekend and it's going to be raining the entire time. And, for whatever reason, we can't really get away from the house. So we just have to stay here for 3 days. What are we going to do? Let's play a campaign. And that happens once a year. And I'm not going to have 5 games that do that, knowing that I'm only going to get to play one of them, annually.
Right.
And so that's a reason to kind of move on. And it's funny how, like, I know that day is coming with Galaxy Defenders. And in no way, shape, or form makes me want to play the game less now. And it certainly doesn't prevent me from going to bat for it with other people. When they say, is this a game I should own? It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a great game. I'm saying that knowing full well that one day I'll probably get rid of my copy. And I don't see that as a discrepancy. I just kind of see it as part of growing up, I guess, a little bit in terms of learning and growing in the hobby.
Yeah, I mean, I Jones theory only when the games line up almost exactly. You know what I mean? No, I do.
Well, but in terms of what? Like in terms of mechanics, or is it everything across the board? Mechanics, theme, and function on the table?
I think it's everything. I look at it as a whole because I absolutely have games in my collection that are novelty items because of the theme. I have Predaporter on my shelf and little if any, desire to get rid of it because it's such a neat aberration of a game, right? It's weird. And, I've only played it once. My playthrough of it was kind of a Venos type of playthrough where it was a lot more challenging than I expected it to be. And I got a vibe off of it that the only way to be good at it was to play it a lot, and it wasn't quite fun enough to play a lot. But I have very little desire to get rid of it at this point because it's so unique. It's such a conversation piece. It's one of those rare times where I keep something almost solely as a conversation piece. So like when people are like, what are these board games about? What are they? And to be able to pull out like, here's one about fashion shows just makes their head spin, right? It's crazy weird. So there's definitely games that by the Jones theory should be long gone because there is nothing in Predaporter that isn't in 25 other games that I like better. And that's not to say I never will get rid of Predaporter when I get tired of talking about it, or quite frankly, if the new version of it comes out, because he's making a new version, a little digression here, but he's making a new version of that game, except instead of the fashion industry, it's
on Mars.
It's not on Mars. That's an expansion. It's a venue you can have a fashion show on Mars. No, it's a video game design studio.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
And while like that's not necessarily an odd theme, it's kind of an awesome theme that hasn't been touched yet. And who's not interested in we play all these games that are about business sims in Vienna in 1745. Why on earth would we not want to do that with a video game studio? I mean, that's amazing. It's like SimCity. So when that comes out, if it comes out, and it's really good and cleaned up, as Portal games on their 4th and 5th releases tend to finally work and be awesome. Strike 3. Yet another sponsor gone.
Jeff with the hat trick.
Yeah. Bing, 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 bing. Indie, baby. No sellouts here. But, if that game comes out and it's as awesome as it seems like it might be and promised, and it really does overlap it almost exactly, that may force me to Jones theory it out, because at that point I'm going to need that slot in my 400 games more for something else. Because the main problem with the main issue at hand here is that games never stop coming out and they never stop getting better. You're always going to want a couple new ones. Like for me, to look at the, how I get into this stuff, talking about kind of the broad thing. I don't spend a tremendous amount of money on new games. I get about, 6 to 8 new games a year. Big release out of Essen, Uwe Rosenberg's new 700-pound box of wooden cards. I get, 6 to 8 of those a year.
His new release is a feast for gamers, and it's nothing but cardboard and wood.
It's actually like a little saw and some sandpaper and some paints, and you craft your own game. But every box is different, so you have to trade pieces around the table to make anything.
But hang on, put this on the docket. We need to make a hobby game that only uses cubes.
Yes,
because I think the irony is awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, I buy like 6 to 8 brand new games a year, as far as like the new hotness. Everybody's talking about it. Your Terraforming Mars, your Feast for Odin, your Inish, whatever. But those type of games are the ones that I buy throughout the year. That's the new money and the expensive buy-in stuff, right? Where for me this kind of collection bloat comes from is part of my enjoying the hobby and what I talked about being broad, having all these little trivia pieces and knowing, the deep cuts on the, as they say, the little known games that have something awesome in them, or games that someone designed that no one even knows exists. Like I kind of always have those sitting in the back of my head as things I would like to check out, or I just found out about, but they're long out of print, or, I've got all this in my brain taking up space that could be used to make millions in stocks or curing cancer, something useful, right? But I don't. That's what I have. And now where I end up getting this collection bloat comes from these games that are kind of not important enough to be remembered, but not rare enough to be expensive. And, you can go to the game stores and buy the used copies for like $20. auctions at the various gaming cons. You can buy all kinds of games for $20-$30 because it's the old swap meet thing. Everybody loads all this stuff and sets it all up, and then they sit there for hours and hours and hours, and then it's time to go home, and they're looking at that pile, and man, they do not want to repack that and haul it around and take it back out at home. You can end up getting a lot of these titles that were kind of piqued your interest for a moment but weren't worth buying into. Kind of the same thing we talked about with the clearance rack market at your local game store, right? The little things that just sit there and you buy them because they're only $20, and you want to just see what they're about, and they're probably on the clearance rack for a reason. And after you play it, you go, hopefully I get $10 for this somewhere. That's what happens more often than not, but it's still that fun journey. My collection bloat tends to come from those. The turnover in my collection is going to the game swaps and chucking out 10 of those games that I tried, and we all went, yep, it's a game. And I get rid of those probably for what I paid for them, maybe a little less just to get them out of my hair. I rented them for $20 instead of buying them, whatever. And then as I'm walking out of that game swap, there's all these people that don't want these games, and they're like $10, and they're things I've heard of, or they're game designers that I know, that I knew they made this, but it certainly wasn't worth $50 at the time, but for $15 it might be kind of cool. And I grab all those and bring them home.
Okay, so once you do that and you have all these games and they've found their second life with you, now they're sitting on the shelf, they're waiting to be played, you're not playing them. I mean, does that just create a stress for you?
It does, obviously. Yeah, that's why people have to have those hard limits for themselves. That they've learned that the stress creeps of having the giant collection and not justifying their existence on their shelves because they're not playing them. It doesn't frustrate me on a daily basis. Like, I don't get up and go, oh man, I have 400 games and I should only have 250. Like that doesn't bother me so much. But I think where it puts pressure on you kind of is when kind of the game droughts come. People go away on vacation. People can't come to game day. Game days get canceled a couple days in a row. And then, and like when you're not distracted by the gaming you're having, the gaming you're not having looms a lot bigger when you have all those games on your shelf.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And I think that's where my tensions come from. And when I tend to have a big cull, when I go, okay, 20 games are leaving right now, they're going. It tends to be in those moments where I've gone a month without any gaming at all.
Yeah, you said it just right, man. I mean, it's that game that you're not having that causes all this, and that's the core of the actual like real world anxiety. It's not even anxiety, right? It's more of expectation based loss that you feel from seeing all that potential and fun on your shelf and realizing that you're not having it. I mean, that is absolutely part of our psychology as humans, that we don't want to lose something when we perceive that we have it, and you own the game, you have it, so you don't ever want to feel like you've lost the fun that you have, even if you haven't actually played it yet, which is super weird, right? But the thing that I think is more difficult sometimes to deal with, though, is when it gets twisted into something that feels more like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, like I absolutely feel guilty when I see my game staring back at me, but honestly, more often than that, like I feel this weird second grade school teacher scowling at me for skipping out on my grammar homework again,
Yeah.
So you like to buy these games, these older games, to understand, why they are considered interesting and why the community thought that they were good. And for me, sometimes I think that for games like that, to get a sense of them, I mean, sometimes it's just as not valuable or even quite as effective, but I feel okay sometimes just going in and reading the analysis that other people have communicated about those designs, because so many people have played them, right? And when it comes to purchasing the games, though, like actually spending my money to have those experiences, what I'm looking for are the games that no one has played, because sometimes there's a game in there that is absolutely worth exploration, but just for whatever reason, everyone just missed it, right? And so the only way to even just get a surface level understanding of this game is to be the pioneer that actually gives it a go. And I have many of those wacky games on my shelf, and the thing about them being on my shelf particularly is that I already want to play a game more than just a few times before I call them, because yeah, I absolutely do like to play my games deep. I'm not the kind of person who usually thinks it's appropriate to play a game once and just think, never again, and then flip it out the window, because it's very possible for me to miss something. And I know enough about the gaps in my net of understanding, right, to have a certain amount of humility that makes me want to give a game a second try. But with that said, with these particular games that I'm talking about, because the only way, again, for me to even touch them is to sit them down and play them, I sometimes feel, I mean, it's almost like a duty that I have to the designers and the makers of that game to play them enough to give them a legitimate chance to prove themselves before I just started spouting off opinions to my friends and stuff. And it's this weird additional pressure, and I know it's totally internal. It's completely made up, right? But it sometimes makes me not even want to start on some of these unplayed games, because I know that once I learn the rules, I'm
obligated to play it 10 times, even if you hate it because of the line you drew in the sand.
I mean, there's so many reasons to keep games, to not keep games, whatever, and you can agree with them or not. But I think the relevant question when it comes to dealing with this angst, right, that accompanies board game bloat and then that frustration that comes with unplayed games, is simply, what will make me okay with getting rid of a game? I mean, that is the more difficult question. And I've just started to really figure this out. And it's some of it's because I play games deep, right? And part of it is that when I get rid of a game, I don't ever want to doubt my decision. I don't ever want to feel some lingering guilt about what could have been, right?
Yeah. See, I don't try to be this way, but what ends up happening for me is I run my game collection more like the dictator of like a banana republic. And, I will just like amass these things and get them and gather them for this and that and this and that. And then when I get a little bit of pressure comes from the States, then I have to do something, like, or I have to, there's rumblings from my collection. They're trying to undermine me, and then I have to make examples of like 10 of them, and I will, John, this week we are playing this because I've had this game on my shelf for 8 years. We've never tried it. I just bought it for the fun of it, and now it's still here, and it's making me angry, and let's play it. And halfway through the game, I've already decided it sucks, because let's be frank, I knew I'm looking for a victim. I'm looking like this is a decimation, and I've already selected the 1 in 10. I already know what they are. However, any good politics is mostly theater. So I invite you guys over. And even though the sentence has already been decided, we have a mock trial of combat in which we play the game. And then when we're done, I ask leading questions at the table to try to coerce you guys into agreeing with me, because it's important to keep an illusion of choice amongst the players. And we wrap it up, and then the next time you guys come over, somebody's like, hey, we could play that one game, and I have to go, nope, I just how about this game? And I pull out a different one and I distract. We'll do this instead.
I love the idea that my incessant positivity is just the biggest wrench in your system here.
Oh, it is.
Jeff's thinking, I specifically invited you to be in my board game jury to watch what's about to happen. I'm just having none of it.
Don't look too closely, John. Don't you know how this works? Don't you understand? But I mean, that's kind of the the funny trick of that is that thing where, to go back to scheduling game nights, I could easily self-indulgently run through 30 games that have been sitting there that I'm kind of I want to have kangaroo court with. But I kind of feel I feel a responsibility to actually play stuff everybody wants to have fun, and I kind of reserve those indulgences, I don't know, once every 2 or 3 months. So we're talking like 1 out of every 8 to 10 game days is when I take one of those down.
I think it's good that you found a way to identify and then deal with the games that are, causing stress in your collection, and how to, I mean, regardless of how imperial you are with the way you rule over your collection. You know what? You have a system.
Right. You know what? At
Good
least
on
the
you.
trains run on time, right?
Oh, no. In all seriousness, though, it's super useful to, with just a ton of honesty, identify those games that are causing irritations of being in your collection and not being played. For me, a huge part of my analysis and how to combat these feelings that we're talking about was identifying that it wasn't like a particular slice of games. Like, it wasn't a genre or a mechanic or even a player count or anything like that. It was actually just those random games that had found my way into my collection kind of as impulse purchases, right? Because it wasn't based on any history or experience or study on my part. You know, as a result, like I've actually kind of started thinking about this in a more total, in a more complete way, right? Where it's more like a gaming metabolism, right? Where, you know, sure, right? There are those things that I'm just going to choose to consume. They're always going to be there. They're the guilty pleasures, right? We're talking about like bacon and BattleTech. These things are always going to be in my house, and I'm going to do what I have to do to keep them there. That's fine. That's kind of over there. I don't have to worry about those things. But then there's the line item stuff that is just, you know, daily consumption. This is the bulk of my diet. These are the games I play all the time. This is the rice and eggs I have every morning for breakfast. This is just the standard stuff. And then there's all that stuff that just sits on top, right? It's the little impulse purchase. It's just that cookie along the way. And that is what a lot of the arbitrary rules that people come up with to try to help them deal with this collection frustration, much like they do with their diets, right? Like it's just a simple rule that you think is going to make this really complicated thing so much easier. That's where this stuff comes from. Because let's be honest, like a lot of these, you know, one game for every situation or just one game of every type, like it functions just like a fad diet. It's simply just trying to control consumption. Like that's all it is, right? And past just having this snapshot of how your collection looks at any given time and making sure that it looks right at that time. And I think past having one of these fad diets that just monitors consumption, you know, the question isn't just consumption, right? It's like when you take your kids to the doctor or your dog to the vet. The real question is, how are their poops? And I think
this has got to be the most useful podcast we've
No,
done.
it is. Seriously. It's
by far.
It's not a question of just how many new games I'm getting and how confident I am that those are the right games, right? Because being happy with your collection simply because you're getting the right games is ridiculous as thinking that you're healthy simply because you're consuming the food your doctor tells you that you're supposed to eat. Like, no, like that's only half of it. The other half is what's happening on the other end. Are those games causing issues while in the collection? And are you seeing those problematic games find their way to the outhouse, right? So I think a sign of health in my game collection is more than just staying under a certain number, right? Especially when I can choose that number to be like 5 years out in the future, like just 5 years of just unfettered purchasing out in the future. Or on the flip side, I can just decide just to stop buying games altogether and just be miserable because I'm starving myself of the fun and the new ideas. I think it's more of a function of you know, looking at my rate of retention due to learning about the hobby, learning about myself, and having those experiences of playing, right? I mean, that's almost like working out here in this metaphor. And then looking at the number of games in my discard pile in relation to the general, hopefully, lack of anxiety that my collection is producing over the number of years I've been in the hobby. Right now, the number of games that I've kicked to the curb is woefully low in relation to that sort of need to play stress that we've been talking about. And ultimately, that's my goal here. I mean, my personal goal isn't necessarily just to cap my games or stop buying games at a certain rate and just hold everything in traction. I mean, I don't think that is... I don't think it's useful, and I don't think that it's a healthy way to approach this problem, for that matter, really any problem. I mean, if the problem we're talking about here is that I have games that I'm not playing, well, I should fix the problem. Like, I shouldn't just stop buying games. I should focus on playing the games and then getting rid of the ones I don't like. And it's that other half. You can fix your diet all you want, but if you're not watching the other end to see if what you're doing is working, you don't have all the information. I think gaming is entirely the same way. For me, I want to see my output increase in terms of the games that I'm getting rid of. And it's my personal goal to just become much more okay with doing that And with really making that kind of more of a regular process, that I'm just turning these games loose.
Hmm.
I'm not really sure if this metaphor is going to catch on anytime soon, though.
And I suppose the board game metabolism is a little longer than daily. So let's just say, how many board game movements a month do you consider healthy?
There's our close.
Yeah.